Alright, we do, folks. Your boom. I'm going to do 5 numbers after the name. A little games beating action over here, man. A little 2020 action over here, man. This game took me a minute to beat. Metal Gear Solid 5. It's a tough one, man. This is a tough one for me. Listen, I think if you're looking for, if you've played Far Cry and you like the whole outpost, like getting the outpost dynamic, and that's kind of the game that you want, like you want the ultimate outpost challenge, I think Metal Gear Solid 5 is a very good game for you. And if you like the addition of adding like mother base building, like so kind of just some base building mechanics, a little sim kind of action when it comes to that, this is the game for you. If you are looking for a Metal Gear Solid game, this is not the game for you. I really struggle. Like as an overall game, I want to say this game is like a 9. But I wanted to play a Metal Gear game by Hideo Kojima, and this to me is like a 7 on that scale. I easily would put this as the worst like Metal Gear game for me personally, for what I'm looking for in it. But as a game, like if you sold this game separate from Metal Gear and you kind of just sold it as like a open world, you know, outpost kind of taking out with this little bit of a story, very little bit of a story, like very little bit of a story, which is the main issue I have, kind of game, and then there's some like base development, even like online kind of stuff, I think it works fine for that. But as a Metal Gear game, it is thoroughly disappointing. And I love Metal Gear, it's one of my favorite series, and I specifically hadn't played this game because I just didn't think it was for me. Like I was like, when I saw like the previews for it and stuff like that, I was like, I don't know if this is like, if this game is for me at all. Like I just don't like, I don't know. So you kind of watch like the preview and stuff like that, and I played Ground Zeroes, and I was like, okay. I played Ground Zeroes, and in my mind I was like, all right, well this is a good proof of concept for the mechanics. Like mechanically this is good. I was like, I don't necessarily like kind of the gameplay, but Ground Zeroes even had like a little bit of a story to it and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, well, proof of concept, everything. It's Kojima. Let's see what happens. And then the reviews started coming in, and people started talking about what the game was, and they got great reviews. It was like 10 out of 10. Like everybody loved it. Whatever was game of the year. It was the same year The Witcher came out, I think. So I think The Witcher got game of the year, but whatever. It was close. It was either this or like The Witcher. And I just looked at this and was like, nah, man. Like I don't like. It's not a Metal Gear game though. Like it ain't. I don't know. So I haven't played it. And during the winter over here, I got like a little bit sick and stuff like that, and I was kind of like working through a couple games. I was like, you know what, man? I was like, it's about time I sit down and I play Metal Gear Solid 5, because I always was going to play it at some point. I mean, let me tell you how much I like Metal Gear. That last year I bought like a PS3, I remember, for like $60 or something like that, just to play Metal Gear Solid 4. Like that's how much I like Metal Gear. I literally purchased an old system to just play one game on it because it's stranded on there. I guess I don't know if you could PS Now it and stuff, but whatever. I wanted a PS3 anyway. I have a ton of PS3 games from just the downloading of the PS Plus, like the free games and stuff like that. So it was worth it for me ultimately. I also have to buy Rambo now that I think about it. Let's see if I get that on the cheap, on the low, because Rambo was like a PS3 game, whatever. Now that game is trash, so that is gonna be like entertaining to play. Either way, so I already went into it a little bit lukewarm. And you start off the game, and it has a nice little cinematic kind of like opening to it with a bunch of stuff. And I was like, nice. I was like, this is pretty good. I knew you kind of started the game in the hospital. I didn't know what happened and stuff. I was like, this is solid. I like this. And then you start playing, and you could kiss the story goodbye. There's stories for each individual mission. There's kind of the codex over here where like you can listen to like Kiefer Sutherland. Like there's like audio stuff that you can listen to, whatever. But that's up to you to do. It's not really like being forced to, whatever like that. So I didn't. The change from David Hayter to Kiefer Sutherland is pretty whack. I have no idea why we needed that. David Hayter is the voice of Snake. Kiefer Sutherland barely speaks. I don't know. That one was just a blown call all around. And to me, the lack of story in each of these missions, the fact that you're taking out just generic enemies over and over again, even like the skulls and stuff like that, which are kind of, I guess, somewhat of like a boss fight type thing, they're kind of whack. Like it's kind of like the same thing. There just isn't no like Psycho Mantis type thing. There is something similar to it, but there isn't no Psycho Mantis type thing. There isn't no like fight with Revolver Ocelot. There isn't no like Fat Man fight or whatever. The guy from like, right? There's no Vamp fight, right? There's none of these there's no Deanne. Like there's none of these memorable moments that we've like gotten from Metal Gear. It's just a very bland experience with Snake and occasional like Metal Gear references, like Ocelot's in it, Master Miller's in it, the guy, Emirates in it. You get these guys, but they're there for like brief moments, and that's kind of it. It almost like just seems like an appetizer when it comes to like the story as to what we're actually dealing with. And like I said, the gameplay's fine, the mechanics are fine, graphically it looks good, it runs smooth, like the game itself is flawless. And if you call this, instead of Metal Gear, if this was like a red faction game or something like that, it'd be pretty damn good. Like, but when you expect Hideo Kojima's Metal Gear, like, you don't expect this. Like, and each Metal Gear is different, but I don't know, there's some kind of basic principles as like a Metal Gear game you kind of have to follow. And this one, just, I don't know, man. And I get it. Here's the thing too. Well, I think this game took off for a lot of people is they weren't maybe as invested in the story. The story's crazy, right? The story's wild. Like, the story is, it's almost impossible to kind of keep track of, like, the story of what it is and what it isn't. And that's fine. But for us that are actually into the story and want to know how it ends, and want to know about Big Boss, and want to know about this period of the game, you're not getting it. Like, you just ain't getting it. And I get that I get that you want to open it up to, but I think there was kind of a little bit more of a middle ground where there could be a little more story, maybe some better backstory, maybe some better explanation on things, and you could still deliver and make both camps happy. Make the I want the story camp, and I don't want like the story camp. Hell, maybe even give it an option. Maybe make this game an option and be like, hey, you want the no story part thing? Cool. Where we only explain to each individual mission briefly on a helicopter. Or would you like the actual story and, like, we'll give you cutscenes in between all that? Make that an option. Like, I don't know. There's ways around it where I think we could have polished the game. I also heard a lot of people complain when it came out that it seemed, like, unfinished and rushed at the end. That is correct. It seems a little bit unfinished and rushed at the end. Now, there were a lot of issues that comes to that in terms of Kojima is dealing with Konami. Whatever. Those are all factors. Nonetheless, it feels like we have kind of a little bit of an incomplete package. A lot of the things kind of feel repetitive. It's go into a certain location, Fulton a guy out, go into a certain location, kill a target. The locations are different. The objectives are kind of the same. It's just there's a blandness to the game that is so opposite of Metal Gear. Metal Gear and the open worldness to me doesn't help the game at all. Metal Gear was like Hideo Kojima's vision, and we're like going through these paths that are perfectly designed for specific situations and encounters with a couple of options in between them. And this is just like, alright, well, it's all open, you do you, and everything's kind of just bland, and there's no real stories, and don't worry about that part, and I don't know, man. Ultimately, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, which is by far probably one of the lowest reviews you'll see, but I caution that if you are a Metal Gear Solid fan, I'm not sure this game is really going to speak to you in any sense of the world. If you didn't like Metal Gear Solid 4, for example, you're probably like 5. But if you like Metal Gear Solid 4, you ain't going to like 5. And I think if you play the Metal Gears, you'll kind of understand that.